Adaptive Emotional Responses Part 1. 7-Step Panacea Model A. Strategy 2. In this module, we will be learning about healthy and unhealthy coping strategies and focusing on emotion-focused therapy, a critical element in holistic psychology. Adaptive emotional responses are beneficial and healthy emotional responses to our life experiences. For example, feeling sadness due to a loss, experiencing anger due to a sense of injustice, and experiencing fear due to a threat are all natural emotions that lead to needed change and taking powerful and responsible action. Our society has placed a stigma on emotions, causing us to believe that they are weak, yet the opposite is true. Denying our feelings and emotions leads to suppressed emotions and poor coping mechanisms. If we continue to suppress and fear our emotions and believe that having them makes us weak, they will have power over us. Emotion is not a weakness, but takes courage to face and confront them. Our emotional health is like any other part of our well-being. We need to practice self-care with our emotions and take time to understand and work through them, just as we would take time out for routine exercise for our physical health. Emotions are energy in motion and, like water, constantly flowing. If we do not allow our emotions to flow through us, they will find a way to submerge and can begin to flood like the breaking of a water dam. We can achieve a healthy peace of mind by first giving ourselves permission to fully express and release the accompanying emotions related to our presenting problem that is free of judgment and free of fear when confronting them. This is a critical process that will teach us how to regulate our emotions and develop adaptive emotional responses. Typically, when we begin to address our problems, we have unresolved emotions associated with them. In this section/module, we will show you how to surrender to your emotions without resistance so that you can learn how to make friends with the, oftentimes, dreaded emotions. This alleviates the paralyzing fear around these emotions. But you cannot heal until you learn how to surrender, which does not mean giving up, but letting go of control in an effort to achieve mastery instead. It means letting go of your past misfortunes and personal tragedies that were meant to transform you, but are holding you back. It simply means to let go of your pain, of your beliefs that are no longer serving you, your pride, your ego deceptions, your illusions of fear, your limiting beliefs, and your self-imposed prisons, to fully let go of reliving the same reality and repeating the same lessons over and over again. To avoid the endless cycle of reactive emotional patterns and let go of the fear of feeling your feelings, you must first allow yourself to fully experience the emotions and embrace them just how they are without trying to control them or hold them back. This will reduce their power over you, contrary to what many people might think. Emotions are a natural part of our being. Emotional suppression is caused by denying ourselves the opportunity to feel or express them, which leads to the majority of our emotional and mental health problems today. Catharsis is the process in which we relieve an emotion by fully purging and expressing suppressed feelings. To be emotionally liberated, emotions need to be freed rather than suppressed. Crying is a great catharsis for releasing grief, pain, anger, or other emotions that may be suppressed. Emotional catharsis is an important factor in our well-being. Common emotions. Refer to the chart provided. Catharsis. Catharsis is like a deep cleanse for the soul, allowing us to release pent-up emotions and prevent them from causing further issues like depression or anxiety. It's akin to opening a window to let out smoke. Once it's gone, clarity emerges. When we resist this natural process, we often suffer emotionally, resorting to unhealthy coping mechanisms. By allowing ourselves to feel and express our emotions, we can experience a sense of freedom and clarity. Underneath negative emotions lie our primary fears, many of which revolve around the need for love. These fears drive much of our behavior, as we seek love, validation, and understanding. Recognizing that our emotions stem from either fear or love helps us understand our motivations and behaviors, leading to a deeper understanding of ourselves. healing pain, letting go, to experience emotional freedom. In the introductory module, we introduced you to the common types of emotional responses adapted from emotion-focused therapy, formulated by Les Greenberg and Sue Johnson in the early 1980s, that represent interaction patterns found between partners and in intimate relationships that can help you identify some of your most common emotional responses. With the application of the mirror technique, we can more easily identify the emotional patterns and responses we use, and that our partners and significant others frequently use with us to help us identify our most common emotional responses. The goal is to avoid reinforcing these negative cycles by recognizing the emotional reactions and responses we use that are produced by negative beliefs and inherent programming and result in unfavorable outcomes in our lives. These reactive behaviors are a consequence of the primitive brain's limbic/amygdala survival responses that are no longer useful in our day and age and, in fact, problematic. Effective healing strategies can allow us to replace maladaptive coping behaviors with emotionally adaptive responses to produce positive outcomes in our lives and in our relationships with others. Here is a review. Emotional responses. Maladaptive, unhealthy, emotional responses are generally dysfunctional responses conditioned by our past emotional experiences or are a consequence of inherited behaviors. Maladaptive responses are a result of unresolved, suppressed emotions that lead to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Reactive, unhealthy, emotional responses are a defense against feeling the deeper, more painful emotions that we are afraid to witness, experience, and process, and include codependent behaviors that induce power struggles with others, such as demonstrated in the Karpman drama triangle. Manipulative, unhealthy, emotional responses are experienced and expressed when we learn that our positive or negative emotions have an effect on others and are typically used to get someone to pay attention to us, to get them to do something for us, to approve of us, or perhaps most often just not to disapprove of us. Emotional self-awareness. Healthy is the ability to recognize and understand one's own emotions. People with this competence can identify subtle differences in their emotions and know how their emotions affect their behavior, decisions, and performance. Clammer, Depth Therapy, 2017. Adaptive, healthy, emotional responses refer to behaviors that enable a person to get along in his or her environment with the greatest success and least conflict with others. Behavior patterns change throughout a person's development, across life settings and social constructs, and changes in personal values. It is important to assess adaptive behavior to determine how well an individual functions in daily life. Cognitive distortions. To have healthy and adaptive responses, we must first remove any cognitive distortions that are reducing the efficacy of our brain function and causing sabotage cycles. Cognitive distortions are simply ways that our mind convinces us of something that isn't true. These inaccurate thoughts are usually used to reinforce negative thinking or emotions, telling ourselves things that sound rational and accurate, but only serve to keep us feeling bad about ourselves. For instance, a person might tell themselves, "I always fail when I try to do something new. I therefore fail at everything I try." This is an example of black or white, polarized thinking. The person is only seeing things in absolutes, that if they fail at one thing, they must fail at all things. If they added, "I must be a complete loser and failure," to their thinking, that would also be an example of overgeneralization, taking a failure at one specific task and generalizing it to their very self and identity. Cognitive distortions are not limited to beliefs and perceptions about ourselves, but also serve to reinforce negative perceptions we might hold toward others. For example, if we have a belief that someone in particular is lazy, our perception might be distorted and we will continue to perceive her/him as lazy in all areas of life, regardless of whether they have a job, raise and take care of children, or take on other life tasks. Cognitive distortions are at the core of what many cognitive behavioral therapists and other kinds of therapists try and help a person learn to change in psychotherapy. By learning to correctly identify this kind of harmful thinking, a person can then answer the negative thinking back and refute it. By refuting the negative thinking over and over again, it will slowly diminish over time and be automatically replaced by more rational, balanced thinking. Question 4. Which primary cognitive distortions do you relate to most? Note all that apply. 1. Black or white thinking, also known as polarized. 2. Overgeneralizing. 3. Cognitive filtering. 4. Disqualifying the good. 5. Jumping to conclusions. 6. Emotional reasoning. 7. Rigidity or rule-keeping. 8. Catastrophizing. 8. Labeling or self-labeling. Acceptance is a healthy mindset strategy and adaptive coping response. With mindful practices, you can learn to overcome any of the classic cognitive distortions and begin cultivating positive mindsets that work for you, not against you. Remember, it's a practice, so be patient with yourself and you'll get there. Acceptance, a healthy coping strategy, is a critical step in developing an adaptive emotional response in dealing with the presenting problems. Acceptance is when one has become aware of a certain truth or reality, acknowledging what is and being okay with it. Awareness and acknowledging a problem always precedes healing and transformation and is an important step to initiate change in the stages of change, SOC, or Trans-Theoretical Model, Prochaska and Diclement, 1983. Prochaska, Diclement, and Norcross, 1992. 5. What are the most common unhealthy emotional responses you can identify with? Anger, blame, manipulation, justifying, rationalizing, defending, running, avoiding or escaping, withdrawing, or other. Please specify. Responses from cognitive distortions. Our responses are shaped by cognitive distortions, which were formed from our past unresolved memories or were conditioned by epigenetics that created our limiting beliefs and sabotaging behaviors. The following questions help us address these distortions so we can adopt healthy coping strategies and responses. 6. If you recognize any reactive emotional responses, what deeper emotions do you believe you are avoiding and why? 7. What poor coping choices or behaviors do you recognize within yourself as a result of suppressed emotions? 8. A common example of poor coping may include escaping to codependent behaviors by seeking validation outside of us as a false sense of fulfillment or self-worth, such as those listed below. Note all that apply. Money, education, identity attachments, image and appearances, material possessions, status, i.e., job, title, relationship, codependency in partnership, external stimulus, escapism or addiction, i.e., overworking and busyness, food, substances, sex, gaming, etc., or other. Explain. 9. Does your mother and father or other primary caretakers tend to cope or respond to stress in a similar way that you do? Is this a learned or epigenetic behavior? 10. How does your mother typically cope or respond to stress? 11. How does your father typically cope or respond to stress?